With just 2 weeks and 1 day until the 2024 presidential election, allies of Donald Trump are starting to sound the alarms over the fact that his failing mental health could easily hand Vice President Kamala Harris the election. Specifically, according to a new report from the New York Times, Donald Trump's allies are worried that his inability to speak is what is going to cost him the election this year. The fact that he cannot talk, or at least can't even stay on subject, is going to hinder him more than anything else. And I agree. But in these last few weeks, we have seen Donald Trump completely go off the deep end in every public appearance he has had. And it is the two parts of it. One, he literally just can't speak properly. You know, he would go off on the tangents and the blah, 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 blah. Like he just gets tongue-tied. He can't think of words. He repeats himself over and over and over again. And I know because I've had to read those clips out loud. And he will say the same sentence 3, 4, sometimes 5 times in a row because he can't think and he can't speak. But it gets even worse when he just goes completely off topic. Like in the Chicago Economic Forum when he was asked about, hey, Google's a bad monopoly. Do you support breaking them up? And he says the DOJ did something terrible in Virginia with the voter rolls. And the host was like, yeah, question was about Google. He doesn't know what he's doing, but let me read you this. Trump allies worry that Mr. Trump's impetuousness and scattershot style on the campaign trail needlessly risk victory in battleground states where the margin of error is increasingly narrow. Trump advisor David Urban admitted that at times the former president's inability to stay on topic makes him his own worst enemy. Urban said, quote, when he's good, he's great. And when he's off message, he's not so great. I don't think anyone is really changing their mind at this point, but when he distracts from his biggest, broadest messaging, it's counterproductive because the Harris campaign uses it to turn out their voters. The problem is Donald Trump is never on message. Okay, I've been saying this for months. When all of his allies and his friends and his campaign and his donors were telling him, you got to stick to the issues, he physically can't because he doesn't understand the issues. But y'all forced it. You said stop with the personal insults. So he did more interviews talking about issues. And when he does that, it goes even worse than him using the personal insults. So I don't know what you're talking about, David Urban, when you're like, when he's on message, he's great. Show me where the guy has been on message. Send me the clip of Donald Trump staying on message through an entire rally or an entire interview. It doesn't happen. You could send me 2 minutes where he stayed on message. You couldn't even send me 2 minutes, honest to God. You could send me like 15 seconds where he stays on track and then he just goes wildly off it. That's all you could do. And no, I don't count 15 seconds as staying on message. But the report continues. This is what is worrying allies about this inability to speak. Internal Harris campaign research showed that one of the most effective ways to persuade voters to support the vice president was by portraying Mr. Trump as unstable and Miss Harris as a steady leader who would strengthen America's security, according to 2 Harris officials who insisted on anonymity to describe private data. In the past 2 weeks, the Harris campaign has flooded the airwaves in battleground states with a pair of television ads to underscore these themes. One spot features warnings from Mr. Trump's former top defense officials to paint him as too big of a risk. Another features endorsements for Harris from a bipartisan group of national security officials. But all of them say the same thing. He's unstable. He is unhinged. He might be crazy. And he's not doing anything to convince people otherwise. If anything, every time he speaks, he's reinforcing that point, which I believe is the real reason they've canceled all those events recently. I talked over the weekend about the fact that Donald Trump canceled, obviously backed out of the 60 Minutes interview a couple weeks ago, and then just last week alone backed out of a CNBC interview, backed out of an interview on the Shade Room podcast, backed out of an NBC News interview, backed out of an NRA convention thing this past weekend. And according to his campaign, it was because of exhaustion. He's just so damn tired. Oh, God, he needs some rest. I think, yes, he is exhausted because he's very old and he doesn't have stamina anymore. But I think the bigger problem is y'all are trying to hide him. You're trying to keep him contained right now in this final stretch of the election because you know when he goes out there and he does something publicly, whether it's an interview, a podcast, even rallies, he's gonna say something crazy that's gonna be in the headlines the next day or possibly even that evening. And you have to avoid that as much as possible because you're dealing with a loose cannon with a very, light grip on reality, if a grip at all, and you don't trust him to be able to speak in front of people long enough to let him do these things. That's what's happening. The campaign is terrified of it, but at this point, Trump is who Trump is, and he's gonna keep screwing up. Thanks for watching today, everybody. And don't forget, if you're not already, please do subscribe to this channel. We have fresh content going up every single day, and I would really hate for you to miss out on that. And speaking of missing out, if you're not following me across all other social media outlets, then get on it. You can follow the links in the description of this video.